Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Oakwalker, and I'm here doing the Earth Medicine Soul Care cast that we do. I'm with my friend Stronghorse.
Hey, Oakwalker, good to see you again.
You too.
Um, so I think last time we were trying to create a thread through all of these podcasts that keeps people engaged,
Yes.
and I think we discussed this. We're trying to pick up where we left off the last time, and if I recall correctly, although it was a couple of weeks ago, we were discussing mirrors of self-reflection,
Yes.
or that's a term that comes from the path I study, but it's you know just how willing are you to look at yourself, and examine yourself and take that as a and be honest with yourself, and with the good and the bad and the ugly. So um, I think I personally think that's a really, really important step in terms of creating the space to be able to allow the grace of the Creator in. So I think that's what we'd like to cover this time. And so why don't you jump in here and talk a little bit about, how does your path address that?
I absolutely agree that it's one of the most important things. In fact, my path, we have a tendency to call it the shadow work as opposed to
Yeah,
mirrors of self-reflection. And when we go into the shadow work, that's one of the first things we do when we are introduced to the entire paradigm of shamanism, which includes the ancient traditions of animism and the idea that everything is connected, that we're connected to the earth and to the elements, all the four elements. We start with the connection to the earth, and that is where we really begin our own shadow work, and it becomes if you want to say self-reflection, it becomes a thing that I've often equated to the confessional, even though we don't exactly confess to one another. It's more of us laying down upon the earth
to
itself
yourself.
and confessing to the earth and just pouring
Got
ourselves
it.
and our hearts out into the ground, basically, so that we can clear
Right.
the air and clear the pipeline for the ability to hear um, the great spirit, or the overall, some people will call it the Holy Ghost, interacting with us in such a way as to be and graceful. That's where the grace comes in, I think, is in the ability for us to finally clear ourselves of our guilt and our shame and our issues, our agendas, if you will, the ego agendas, and allow ourselves to get quiet and just listen. And we'll do that. That never stops. We do that in every phase of our development and growth in any of the traditions that I've been involved in, pretty much.
Yeah, I think we they re they refer to my path as a warrior's path, and a lot of people think warrior's path that, oh, there must be a battle involved, but a lot of the real warrior's path is the one where you really take on yourself,
Exactly.
and you see yourself as your own adversary, and the willingness to dig deep into that really determines what level of mirror reflection you're looking at.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I've seen a lot of people who talk about it, but when it comes down to practicing it, that's a whole nother ball of wax.
And
Uh,
walking the talk.
and I've got to, yeah, it's easy to say, well, yeah, I'm a real compassionate person, but are you really? I mean,
Right.
have you tested that, or is
Yeah,
that just
gosh, I
a
haven't seen that.
theory? Yeah, right. So I want to share with you a personal story that I think illustrates a mirror reflection for me.
I'm
And
all over it.
it yeah, I mean, it came up. I woke up the other night, and I started thinking about, well, what are we going to talk about if on mirrors reflection? And this came up, and I was up for hours just because it was working on me it was so impactful on me.
I get that.
So so I had a house down in Mexico for several years and up in the mountains in a little village, about an hour outside of Puerto Vallarta, up in the Sierra Madres. And one
Sounds
year
idyllic.
dr driven my car down there, and I was driving back, and it's a 22-hour drive. So I mean, it's a
Mm.
serious drive, and you go through mountains, you go through deserts, and I was going through this desert, and it was, well, I mean, out in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
and it was flat, and the road went on forever, and I'm rolling along, and I noticed up ahead some cars looked like they were stopped, so I started slowing down. There were no police or anything. It was just like there's a bunch of cars that had stopped. So I started slowing down, and there really wasn't any traffic. There was a few cars around me. They were slowing down too. But as we came up on this situation, there'd been an accident, and several cars had stopped, trucks.
Hmm.
And apparently, what had happened was there was some kid on one of these super souped up motorcycles who apparently opened it up and lost control. And so, you know, probably over 100 miles an hour or something, but he was a wreck. I mean, he was, his legs and arms and everything were going about six different directions. I mean, he was in bad shape. And
Uh-huh.
when you come up on those kind of situations, those kind of tragedies, it has a real impact on you,
Mm.
and it tends to kind of freak you out. That wasn't the part that impacted me the most.
Mm.
The part that impacted me the most was that there was this elderly Mexican woman who had stopped and was sitting in the middle of the highway holding this young boy and giving him compassion as he was obviously, in my opinion, passing over.
Uh-huh.
And it freaked me out. It still freaks me out. And the reason it freaks me out so much is that, because I mean, there's nothing I could do. I can't speak the language. I mean, people had already stopped. So I kind of wove my way around this thing and kept going. And I was, almost in a state of shock for quite a
Yeah.
while. And, so, I started looking at this and like, what, I mean, what exactly was it about that freaked me out so much? And the thing that freaked me out is that I knew somewhere deep inside my soul and my heart that if it were up to me to put myself in the same situation as that lady, I would not have stopped.
Uh-huh.
Or I might have stopped, and I may have, if I'd have come up on her when she did, I may have pulled over and directed traffic or something. But if I'd have gotten out of my truck and gone up there and picked this poor, broken kid up and put him in my arms and tried to, comfort him as he was passing over, the honest answer is no.
Yeah, at that
No.
time.
Yeah, and I look into this being, that's me, and think, what's that about? I mean, what is that about? Why wouldn't I have that part of me? And, if you're not on a path where shadow work or mirrors or self-reflection, whatever, is not a part of it, you could write it off. I mean, the easy way would be, well, she was a grandmother and I'm a guy, and grandmothers do that, and
Uh-huh.
whatever, coloring book,
Yeah.
superficial excuse I could give to just get on with myself and not let that bother me anymore. But that's not who I am.
Yeah.
That's not what I've contracted to do. And so I had to start looking into this really deep. And I could go into the initial digging into this mirror reflection as well. I was part of a family that really didn't have any, they didn't really show any compassion. So I never really learned it,
Yeah.
but that you have to dig in deeper than that,
Oh, yeah.
and particularly in the other morning when I woke up and I started really getting into this, and thinking because I wanted to think about how to talk about this. And I'd read a quote uh, several days ago about what a Native American was talking about. He says all Native Americans know that when you separate yourself from nature, your heart hardens.
Hmm.
And so when it gets down to it, that's what I realized is that I have allowed my heart to harden,
Yeah.
and I think that that's a plague that is running through this whole country.
I agree.
You know this this woman was for lack of a better term, a peasant woman. She probably grew up in some small village and had been
Yeah.
poor her whole life. The moment she was needed, she was right there, man,
Right on
and
it.
didn't hesitate. Yeah, and was just she knew that's what she had to do. And I don't not only do I know that I wouldn't do that, I don't know anybody that would, be honest
Uh,
with you.
yeah. There's a real dearth of compassion in the United States. And I think that it's been amplified lately because it works well for the particular paradigms that are being pushed on us as of late,
Right,
in the last 40 years or so. I mean, not just the last 10 years, but they've been doing this for a while. And
right,
they're it's as if they're literally driving us away from a compassionate point of view as far as
right,
life is concerned. And I think that's why what you and I can do by sharing our traditions on this podcast is help to bridge that gap back again and bring that which is natural, because what that grandma had was that connection with nature, like you've been talking about. She grew her own food. She had
right,
animals on her property. She knew, how to talk to cows. That was just a part of her life. And literally, when you're in that, the spiritual essence of the land is something that you don't even have to question it anymore when you've gotten that close to nature again, and you can just be in it and feel in it, and you can feel what the trees might be trying to teach you, and you can see what the birds, for example, might be helping you to realize, uh, and they're not even consciously, it's not like the birds are going, yo, Oakwalker, hey, dude, how you doing? Even though for years I wanted to believe that that's what was happening, like the whole universe was trying to help me uh, get better, heal, grow, turn back into the kind of people that we were literally designed to be before we uh, became so industrialized and so divorced from everything that is truly natural and not artificial, as you would say, with that artificial intelligence that comes from being over culturalized. Um,
absolutely. No, I go ahead.
but what was hard for me, and it was so sad because I really wanted all the birds to just be my buddies and out there, going, "Hey, Oakwalker, how you doing?" But they're not doing that. They're just being bird, right? And it's up to me to listen and not,
Right, right.
and try to participate as best I can, rather than making myself the center of some universe that's only, partially real in my own mind. That
Well, I think that that's what the mirrors of self-reflection do, particularly in terms of connecting to the grace of the Creator.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like you have to have those compassionate eyes.
Mhm.
In the Bible, they talk about you have to if you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear,
Yeah.
you have to have those compassionate eyes. You have to have those eyes of mercy. You have to have those eyes of forgiveness. You have to have those eyes of of balance, because without those, you're not getting it. You're not open to receiving it because it just doesn't matter.
Hmm.
I mean, and you and I both have, periods of our life where, if somebody said, "Well, are you hearing what the birds say?" You'd think, "What exactly are you asking me? Why would I want to do that?" I mean, we just like get out of my life, man.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that's, that's what earth medicine does. It
Yeah.
gives you the attitude and approach, or the ability to perceive in ways that you wouldn't normally perceive unless you were disciplined or introduced to or allowed yourself to enter into this. And so I think that's where the hardened heart comes in.
Yeah.
If you are carrying a hardened heart, then you're just not open to it.
Hmm.
And so, whether we're talking about individually or as a country or as a globe, whatever community aspect you want to talk about, it's a function that we have to start paying attention to.
Yeah. And it has to start from the individual.
Right.
My mentor, uh, Miro Quesada, he had a wonderful way of saying this. And he would say, and he said this often, the longest journey on earth is the journey from your head to your heart. Or he would say, the longest journey on earth is the 14 inches from your head to your heart. That was an even better way of putting it because, it gave you the dimension of how much it took to make every inch count, if you will.
Right.
And I always
Yeah.
appreciated that one. It just spoke to me very, very powerfully. And so even when I first began, before I did any Pachacuti Mesa stuff, I was working with my herb teachers, and they started real early with a kind of a Southern Californian indigenous tradition, where we would ground ourselves, and we would start from we would do it by chakras, and we would start from the root chakra, and then eventually we'd have everything from the root all the way up to the crown chakra all aligned and anchored into the earth, and then that would go up to the stars, and you would become like this little guitar string of in the universe that's vibrating exactly to the vibrations of God, if you will, because now that you've made that whole connection, you've gone beyond what's just, yourself, your little self, your ego self. And it allows you to tune in and listen. Um, Examples
Well,
like
and I
these are
think
through.
if you go back and look, there was probably some point in your life where a mirror reflection came to you that motivated you to go to that place to investigate it.
Yep. And to keep going deeper and deeper.
Yes, absolutely. And so people, I think this is what separates spiritual paths from religion, is that the religions tend to speak in terms of, well, you need to follow this particular morality or this
Yeah.
particular
Here's your
belief
rule
system,
book.
and yeah, and if you don't, then you're going to pay the price, and
Yeah.
and we have the ticket. Whereas in spirituality, it's like you can do whatever you want to do, but if you want to do it right, you better get straight with yourself.
Exactly. You
Because
get,
that's where it is, man. It's all with you. It begins and ends with you. And so, what are you
yeah,
going to do? And um, that was a difficult part for me too. And it's not something that I've completed or really expect to complete
right.
before I cross over. Because I think that's probably an unending soul trip.
Yeah,
It's probably a. Go ahead.
I think that's true. And even one of my favorite books, The Course in Miracles, he sort of establishes the basis of that it's really the fact that you're still working with your ego, and that you can stop doing this over and over and over and over and over again when you choose to just get out of yourself. And there's a decision that needs to be made there. And and we're making it over and over and over and over and over again in order to develop ourselves into that level of absolute mysticism, if you will, where we finally just become combined with the great mystery. And I don't believe that causes us to lose our individual awarenesses, but I do believe that it makes it less necessary to have to work our issues out in a body anymore, if that makes any
Well,
sense.
also, I think a key word you said there, I think, is ego, because the term ego is really not really understood, I don't think. Yeah, I think a
Yeah.
lot of people immediately associate ego with self-importance. That's not
Uh-huh.
true. The ego is the same as like cash. What you do with your money depends on or determines a lot.
Yeah, the
You can
choices you
you
make.
could yeah, the choices you make, you can help other people, or you can just help yourself, or however you care to spread that apart. It's the same thing with the ego. The ego, I think, is tied into mirrors of self-reflection, because it's almost like you got to have some ego to be willing to step in that arena.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you got to be willing to say, "Hey, you know what? I can do this. I've got what it takes to do this." And to some ways, that in some sense, that is ego.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Does
that
that sound
self
right to you?
it well, yeah, I give it the ego is kind of that mm, uh so yeah, the body and the ego are interrelated. I don't think you can have one without the other, for example. You have to have an ego to have a body, you have to have a body to have an ego. And so they kind of go together. And I think that's what Jesus was talking about in Course in Miracles, is that now, once you really, really, truly don't need an ego anymore, that means, by his definition, that would mean that you no longer have to put yourself separate from your creator. That's the whole thing of the Course
Mhm.
in Miracles, is that your ego is that thing that makes you think that you're not part of the creator. And that's just literally impossible. That can't happen. But as long as you're going to persist in believing that, then in fact, you have some issues to continue to work out.
Right, right. I was watching this thing on Facebook the other day, and the guy had a great term for that. He says, you're a fractal of the creator."
Oh, I love that.
Isn't
That's
that
good.
cool?
Yeah, and I say that the creator has as many facets as there are individuals within it. And
Yeah.
that is far more than just the 8 billion people on this planet. There's just there are individuals for everything that exists. Maybe every molecule is an individual, for all I know. So it's just that vast in my mind.
Yeah, and I think the creator in itself is in a constant state of mirror self-reflection, because it
Yeah.
is it's wants to learn about itself. It's expanding and learning and discovering, and that's really the adventure of life. And
Yeah.
as a fractal of the computer, that's really kind of what we're doing. and
Uh-huh.
and and the ego gets in the way when you decide to put yourself out in front of the creator.
Yeah. That's when it's no
And that's
longer a
where the
healthy
problems
ego.
arise. Yeah, yeah. So, well, I think this is good. I think we covered that in a good way.
Um,
I think that in terms of grace, I find that the more that you delve into the mirrors of self-reflection, the easier it is for you to receive and express grace.
and forgiveness, which is, I think, the
And
the point of grace or the path to it or both.
Yeah, and absolutely. And our in a Northwest wheel, it's you got grace over here and you got forgiveness over here, so they constantly working with one another.
Uh-huh. I like that.
And yeah. So it's the in the forgiveness. A lot of people think, well, that's really good. If you're forgiving people, what a lot of people don't understand is forgiving is for you.
Oh,
You
yes,
know,
absolutely.
yeah, you're the beneficiary of forgiveness.
Right?
So the more you're willing to forgive, the more you're willing to let go of, the more space opens for you to receive the grace of the Creator.
Exactly.
And
Bing, bing, bing.
you know, yeah, and once that starts filling you up, then you're like, well, now I get what this is about.
Uh-huh.
You start feeling it. You start
Yep. And it feels
think, well,
good.
this is yeah, this ain't theory any longer.
Uh-huh.
It's palatable.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And I
That's
think that's
nice.
where, again, where spirituality and religion diverge, because I've never seen too many religions where they're trying to get them to each individual to have a palatable, intimate relationship with the Creator. They always want to put themselves in between that,
Yeah,
you know.
they sure do. Well, we have
There's
to
spiritual
close.
teachers who do that too, but
Some are real good at it.
theoretically,
Yeah.
huh?
Some are real good at it and some are charlatans.
Right. So theoretically, I think that, for me, the one place it doesn't put itself in is Mother Earth.
Hmm.
I mean, there's no pretense there at all.
Yeah. And your pretense
It's
it
pretty,
just isn't going to work there.
no, it doesn't, there's no place for it to attach itself.
Uh-huh. That's beautiful.
It's all clean and clear. And I think that that's for me, that's where earth medicine really comes in is it's like it's here, it's everywhere, it's available, doesn't cost you anything. Just go get it.
There. Okay, well, we are out of time, and I'm sorry to have to close it off, but this has been beautiful. I like the way we finally, I like what you did with closing that out in those last few sentences. So I am going to go ahead and thank everybody on in our audience, I should say, and I thank you, Mr. Frank Stronghorse. I love you, and I am going to say goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.